Hey, little brothers and sisters out there, it's Big Bro Von. Today I'm going to talk about excuses. When people typically talk about excuses, they often talk about limitations that they put on themselves by making reasons for why they can't do something. But today I'm going to talk to you about how you put limitations on yourself by allowing mediocre behavior to exist or to be accepted from others. One of the issues I had growing up was justifying the poor behavior of other people. Let me give you an example. I had cousins who were about my age at the time, so maybe like 13 and in between 13 and 15 years old. And they used to come over, and what I would notice is that they would come over and they wouldn't really spend time with me. They always watched TV, watched movies, and that was fine, but it felt like when we would spend time together, my input wasn't really valued. And very rarely would we watch something in the genre that I wanted to. They also ate up all of our snacks, so much so that my mom refused to buy groceries if she knew in advance that my cousins were coming over. So after a few times of this happening, it just kind of it started to feel as if they were just there to watch TV and they weren't really there for me. I found out eventually that they didn't have cable in their house, so I understood. I was like, okay, like they don't have cable. And with that, that's here's where I made my mistake. I said in my mind, okay, they don't have cable in their house, so this is an opportunity for them to be able to watch different things that they might not be able to. And I accepted their behavior because I decided that because there was a reason for it, that it was appropriate to accept that behavior. And they kept coming over and they kept behaving the same way. Excuse me. Excuse me. Now, as an adult, I see that interaction a lot different. My home, my things were mine to do with as I pleased. I felt like if I did not allow my cousins to do the things that they wanted, that I would have been a selfish person and I would have been a bad host. But let me tell you something. There is a point to where being too unselfish allows you to become a victim of abuse. Was it fair that my cousins expected to come over and eat up our snacks? Was it fair that I didn't have the usual foods that I was used to in the time before they came over? Was it fair when they came over and often disregarded what I wanted to watch and instead did what they wanted? If you really think about it, no. And that's the root of that was the root of the issue, right? It's all about perspective. When people come over and they do things, you might see it on its surface level as okay, maybe I'm being this. But if you break it down, there might be a root process with that. So I should have looked at the situation and determined what was appropriate for me, right? So sometimes people often confuse generosity and obligation. My mother was generous when she allowed them to come over. On their end, they felt like she was obligated to do so. My mother, over time, slowed the frequency of having my cousins over because she understood that they were taking advantage of her. But she often also felt a little guilty because they didn't have much to do at home. And then it clicked. I thought, well, them not having cable is a reason, but it's not an excuse for how they behaved when they were in our home. Eventually, after learning this lesson, my cousins came back over. My mother had gone out to get groceries, and my home was as it should have been. They started their usual behavior. I kindly sat them down on our couch and had a conversation with them because they are guests. They will behave like guests. I told them, you should ask my mother for anything you want outside of water and leftovers. It's not appropriate that when she goes to sleep, you sneak into our kitchen and you eat our stuff. And I had my snacks, but I still didn't have a fun time with them. So even though I was able to get them out of eating my things, I realized that just spending time with them was not very enjoyable for me because they still outnumbered me movie wise, and they just did what they wanted to. So okay, like that's fair, that's a democracy. You got it. After figuring out that I just don't enjoy their company, I was like, okay. I let it go, finished the weekend, continued on. About 3 weeks later, my mother came into my room and asked me, hey, do you want X, Y, and Z to come over this weekend? And I paused and I said to my mom, no, I'm okay. What they didn't realize was that I had a more important vote than they did. I could determine whether or not they came over. And they didn't come over. Eventually, a few times of this happening, they called me on my phone and they asked me why I didn't want company. And I told my cousins, listen, I don't want to be around people that want to use my things but don't want to treat me or my things with respect. My home and my TV are mine. I don't owe you the ability to come over. If you had been a pleasant guest and were enjoyable to be around, I would have wanted you around. Is it fair every time you come over, you take the TV from sundown to sunset? Don't you think that I want to watch something that I'm interested in? Why would I make a conscious choice to give up the power to watch whatever I want, whenever I want, to people who eat up all of my food and take away my ability to do what I want to, whenever I want to? I would rather be by myself enjoying my own company than to be miserable around other people. And they didn't stay over another night again. And there were day visits, sure, but there were no more sleepovers. You are not going to make me feel bad in my own home. My point is that in this story, it showcases how I justified other people's actions. I thought it was acceptable that they could just come over because they had a reason for why they acted that way. You're going to have people in your lives who do things, and you're not going to be certain about if how you feel internally is an appropriate response. And I'm going to challenge you that if you ever feel uncertain about somebody's behavior, to sit down and think about the why. Because usually when you feel upset about something like I did, there's a certain level of validity to it that you might not be giving yourself. Don't allow people to take advantage of you. And if it's one thing I learned, okay, people often deem the act of being selfish a flaw. But it is very important in nature, and as you as a person, and having that ability to be selfish when you need to. That willingness to be selfish can allow you to protect yourself from people who want to use you. If I can give you any advice as a big brother or as somebody who would like to just leave something for you that's meaningful, be comfortable being selfish and be comfortable being a villain if you know you are not one. What I mean by that is there are people who are going to, because they don't like the way you do something, associate it with a negative feeling and automatically villainize you, even though whatever it is you might be doing isn't inherently wrong because it's within your best interest. And just because some people don't like it does not make it wrong. But that's just what I want to leave with you today. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed the content that I made, please consider subscribing. I'm going to be putting more content like this out here, probably like once a week. I'm talking about a whole bunch of different things I feel like young people should at least be somewhat exposed to, and you can go on and do your own research. You can be whoever you want to be. I'm just giving advice for what I think is useful and may be helpful to you. So thank you.